and it gets me in trouble a lot. I'll say I confuse people, I make people sad, but I do it because I want failure, right? And so now I'm trying to reshape that around hypothesis. We have a hypothesis, and we're going to test it, and we're going to have new information, right? So there's options A and B. We might personally think, you might be tied to A and think it's right, but when we say we're just testing between A and B, right? When it turns out B is right, then awesome, we have new information and we can move, right? And I think that also means I'm willing to do things with much less thinking, right? Much less debate. So like, how are we going to get the information to answer this question? Like, we can talk about it all day. We can draw more and more pictures, or we could put it in front of customers and see if it works.
Hey, Luca here. Welcome to a new episode of the Refactoring Podcast, where every 2 weeks we interview a world-class tech leader. Today's guest is Rob Zuber, CTO of CircleCI. With Rob, we talked about software delivery, the impact of AI, and how to build great product engineering teams. And next, we discuss trade-offs between standardization versus flexibility in software organizations and lessons learned from our respective past mistakes. So let's dive right into it. Welcome, Rob, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Luke. I'm super excited to be here.
So, Rob, you are the CTO of CircleCI, which is one of the world's largest CI/CD platform used by thousands of organizations worldwide. So, I guess this gives you one of the best vantage points in the industry to understand really how software gets built and shipped. So, do you feel this responsibility today to educate us?
Yeah. Oh, I love that you threw responsibility at the end there. It was feeling so joyful until you put that on there.
Wanted to put some pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I use that expression vantage point all the time. Like we're sitting very much at the heart of software being delivered. And absolutely, it's I got into this business because I love software. I love software delivery. I love effective teams. I love all those things. And so it's both exciting and terrifying to have that responsibility. It means I have an opportunity to impact software organizations all over the world, not just my own. It also means I have the possibility of impacting software organizations all over the world, right? So, we collectively wake up every day thinking about how to make everybody better. I think, as a CTO, you're always already thinking about making your team better. And so kind of doing that at a different sort of scale is really exciting. And like a little bit terrifying, but I think we've been at this a long time. We know a ton about it. We have amazing customers who share with us, their journeys and what they need in ways that just always push us to be better. And it's just super fun, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. And so I want to start really with the latest and greatest, because you've just published your 2025 State of Software Delivery report, which with data from more than 10 million workflows. And so I just wanted to ask, what have been the biggest findings this year? I mean, what has been the most surprising?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that I'm always looking for the surprise. And I feel like, a lot of what we see is folks are getting a little better at this and a little better at that. And so maybe what's surprising to us at the moment is how much change there is in the industry overall. Like not so much, in our numbers or whatever, but like we just see so much change in the industry. I mean, it, everybody knows it. Like just the way we think about building software is changing so fundamentally. But the measures of quality are still kind of the same. You know what I mean? It doesn't. Like we see more throughput in particular organizations. We see folks moving differently, but it's the core goals of engineering are still the same, right? And I think actually we saw each other in Berlin recently, and you raised this point, like the things that are good for AI are good for humans, right? Like it's odd and ironic, and I was talking to some other folks about this recently on a podcast webinar thing, that we're finally investing in the things that we always should have invested in. So what we're seeing, and we're actually back to the point of the State of Software Delivery report, we're looking for new signals to help us validate this. But what we're seeing is that one, there's acceleration in one part of the process, but not necessarily in the entire process, right?
Yeah.
So people are really feeling that, theory of
Mm.
constraints, bottlenecks, how do we improve operationally across the board? And two, the rapid acceleration, like apply pressure to any system, right? Apply heat, apply actual pressure, like depending on your metaphorical
Yeah.
system, and all the cracks will be shown, right? And so
Yes.
we sort of probably collectively built systems good enough to move at the pace that we were moving at, and maybe got complacent with that
Mm.
pace. And now we're like, oh my goodness, we could move so much faster, and we see a glimmer of it, and then everything else collapses. And
Yeah.
so what we're really witnessing, as we talk to our customers, as we get out and spend time, it's probably more in the anecdotes than in the data. And I know that was a fun topic that
Yeah.
I took away from you as well. But like we're seeing that real crunch and pressure and
Yeah.
realization of, like, it's exposing the places where we all still have gaps in our ability to execute. And so I think that's really great. Like, regardless of
Yeah.
what you think about code generation by itself, it's here, right? And now the question is, can we use it and make sure that we're using it in a way that's really impactful and effective?
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we're gonna have to fix everything else, not just code generation.
Hey, remember how code reviews used to be fun before AI slop started flooding our pull requests? Well, me neither, but at least back then we could blame humans, right? Now, regardless of who or what wrote your code, our friends at Codacy have managed to fit the best security and quality scanners into a single powerful engine. You can plug it right into your AI agent, editor, and pull requests with zero configuration. Here is how. In the IDE, Codacy catches and auto-fixes things like insecure dependencies and hard-coded secrets suggested by your agent. It scans as you type, flagging quality violations, complex functions, and SAST issues before you even commit. And plugged into Git, Codacy acts as your central safety gate. It stops bad practices like error-prone, duplicated, or untested code, and even those dangerous invisible Unicode injections from ever being merged. And thanks to smart false positive triage, your developers only need to review what truly matters. And in production, Codacy's Dust engine protects your endpoints against runtime threats like SQL injections, and you can even schedule pen tests directly from the platform. So finally, for the leaders listening, Codacy aggregates all of this data into a unified dashboard, letting you segment risk by team or project so you know exactly where your hotspots are. So don't let AI code ruin your code reviews. Start your free trial and get 20% off your first 3 months at codacy.com/refactoring. Yeah, I love how you approach this because, I mean, you look at software delivery numbers, right? And I
Hmm.
mean, we all talk about like all these transformations that are going on, but if you had just to look at the numbers and you didn't know like that there was
Hmm.
anything going on, like all this AI thing, would you be able to say, hey, there is something that that is going on here because we can see this and that, or still, the bottom line is, meh, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of meh, I don't know if you're familiar with this bell curve meme that was really popular like over the last couple of years, where basically like the bottom of the bell curve and the top are the same, right?
Yes,
And
yes, absolutely,
and this
yes.
this came up for me recently when I was looking at some metrics that someone had put together around delivery, and I I, I can't remember. I think the topic was um, like process cleanliness, right? How many of your PRs are associated with the appropriate Jira ticket or linear or whatever? And basically, like, how good are you at documenting everything that you're doing and why? And my personal belief
Yeah.
is the worst teams and the best teams look the same on that metric, meaning
Mm,
when we're really good, we don't actually care about that because everyone knows that we know what the customer needs and we're working as fast as humanly possible to get them that. And so that kind of mid, like the meh, is, metrics will get you so far in terms of creating a floor, right? We're not
Yeah.
going to get any worse than this because we're very clear and we know that everyone has written everything down and they've tagged everything appropriately and whatever. But I think certainly the best operating teams that I have been on, um, didn't care that much about that. What they cared about was the customer, right?
Yeah.
And like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do that because we didn't prioritize a ticket and it wasn't written properly. And like this tag wasn't added, therefore we can't touch it right now. Like that doesn't come up, right?
Yeah.
But because it's a very high trust, very customer focused environment, right? You get a lot more leeway there. But if you just
Yeah.
look at metrics, you could equally be looking at a team that is just complete chaos, has no idea who their customer is just building whatever they feel like building, disregarding what everybody else asks. And so I think, it's important. The data is important, but data without sample anecdotes
Yes.
can be completely misinterpreted, right? And you can look at it and say, "Oh, definitely this is what's happening," right? Definitely this is what's happening. And we do that when we put together the state of software delivery report. We look at enormous amounts of data. I say we, I'm being very generous to myself. The team that builds it, who are amazing, look at enormous amounts of data, but they ask great questions, right? Hey, this looks a little bit
Yeah.
different this year. What do you think is happening? Because it could be a few different things, and then we call some folks and just say, hey, what are you seeing in your environment? What do you think is changing here? To try to be really just honest about what we see in that data.
Yeah, and I love this advice. Makes me think of the old adage that is don't focus on outputs, focus on inputs.
Mhm.
And sometimes it feels like when we over focus on these numbers, we are focusing on outputs, trying to address them directly. But instead,
Yeah.
they are only good if they come out of the right inputs, like focusing on the customers, having good conversations, and so on. But if we only try to match the numbers themselves, we don't necessarily get a good outcome just because the numbers look good.
Yeah. I mean, as a super simple example, like PR throughput has sort of become a basic thing
Yeah.
that we look at just to know what's going on. Is it going up and down? But it's a very it's a downstream indicator of other changes that we've made,
Yeah.
right? And we should see that number go up, assuming that the value of those PRs is either the same or also increasing, right? And um, and I always joke, like if we just told people to increase their PR throughput, like we'd have the best readmes on the planet, like, oh, I fixed this punctuation, there goes a PR, like I added a sentence here, like but we were trying to do meaningful work, and meaningful work is not measured even in lines of code, right? It's measured in at that point outcomes for the customer, right? Like, or for the
Yeah.
business. Have we substantially improved the business in some way? Maybe we simplified some. Maybe it's negative lines of code because we made something simpler, therefore it's faster, more reliable. We've delivered something to the customer, and really like getting from sort of engineering metrics to then ultimately outcomes, right? Like
Yes.
business, what are we driving on, as a leader in a business, it usually looks like revenue, right? Which is the greatest indicator of whether or not you're succeeding, whether you're putting something out that your customers value and want.
Yeah.
And there's no lines of code to revenue mapping. Doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Absolutely does not exist. Probably inverted, honestly. Right?
Fortunately,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, right. I totally agree. So, we're already talking about some of my favorite topics like software delivery, talking with customers, building products. And so I want to bring you on a thought experiment because
Mhm.
you have seen so many teams, so many ways of working. So if you had like a magic wand today and could set up a single product development team, say a small group of people, like 5 to 10 people, to work any way you like. And let's say
Mhm.
they work on something straightforward, like a B2B SaaS. Okay, nothing like that is too niche. How would you set up that team? What do you care about the most? What are the things that you need to get right?
Yeah. I love this. It's super fun. I also love thought experiments. I talk all the time about like my background is in physics, not in software, right? And so like
That's
real
perfect then.
experiments in physics are super expensive, and that's true in everything that we do, right? So I mean, I'll try to use this as a pathway into actually answering the
Yeah.
question, but there are a number of very complex approaches to software or to customer value or whatever that you can conceive of. And I find myself often saying, but what if we got to the end of this and the answer was this? And what if we got to the end and the answer is this? And when the
Yes.
answer is the same, why are we doing it? Right? Like, if we're not going to change our behavior after all of that work, then what have we learned? Right? Or,
Yeah.
I'll use a super simple example, like someone saying, hey, I think we really need to do some chaos engineering here, right? Because like everybody loves chaos monkeys and it sounds super cool and
Yeah.
whatever. And saying, well, what would happen if we unplug the database? Oh, everything would break. Okay, so we've just done the chaos engine. Like, unless you are 100% or at least 99% confident that it's going to work, you don't need to build an elaborate system to test whether it works or not, right?
Yes.
Like,
Love the example.
build a reliable system in the first place, and then let's talk about, the really extreme thing that we have to do to demonstrate whether or not it actually succeeds under the conditions that we've designed for, right? And I love it notionally, but you have to have the necessary level of maturity to spend that time and energy. And there's so many things that are so cheap just by thought experiments. So anyway, I will say, my sort of segue there is that is a key characteristic of a great team. A team that says, what is the fastest way that we can get the information that we need in order to make the next decision, right? And when the fastest way is, what would happen if we did this? Oh, it would all go sideways. Like that, you can't get much faster than that, right? Like, it's the speed of thought sort of thing. And so in order to do that, like the sort of characteristics of the people on the team, if you will, or at least needs to be dominant such that it becomes the culture of the team, is really clear understanding of the business goals, and like almost singular focus on that. And I don't just mean revenue. I mean, we talked about revenue earlier, right? But like, if we're talking about, like, my experience with teams of 8 to 10 people is startups that I've built, right? And so in that world, the good news is you're always under great pressure to find the next thing, right? Your pre-product market fit, for example, and that's true for the next feature that you're launching in your very large company, particularly right now, as the entire, like, how everything is built is changing, right? Everyone's trying to incorporate LLMs into their product, but they don't really know if they're adding value. Like, there's a lot of pre-product market fit even in larger organizations. And so in that space, the only thing that matters is finding that product market fit. Right. And I was recently talking about early days of CircleCI and the scaling challenges that we went through as we were growing really quickly. Right. And it's a badge of honor. Like, to get there is a sign that you have succeeded, right? To get to the place where your system is crumbling. And I think a number of engineers, by their makeup, depending on what systems they've worked on throughout their career, would feel bad about getting to that point, right? Would feel bad about the large string of incidents and customer apologies and all those things that happen through scaling. But the systems that get built that never go through that scaling problem don't go through it for two reasons. One, they were built ideally, but the other, they never got to that scaling problem because they were so busy trying to build the perfect system that they didn't find product market fit. And you run out of cash, and your investors look at you and say, we haven't seen any movement since the last time we gave you cash. There's no indication that we should give you more. And you're done, right? So the only thing that matters is the objective of the business. And that objective might mean, there's a lot of pivots in sort of early companies and stuff, right? Like, so what matters, again, is ability to move, ability to pivot, clear understanding of the business objectives overall, clear understanding of how to experiment and learn to move towards those. Sorry, you're going to ask something else.
Let me stop. Yes, let me stop you here for a moment. So when you say business understanding, this is for everyone. So engineers, designers, PMs. I mean, nobody gets insulated from this.
Right.
Am I right? This
100%.
Is what you mean.
I mean, if we're talking about 8 to 10 people, it's you have to actively work to not understand what the business is trying to do, right? Like, and I have the luxury of sort of the business that we built that got acquired by CircleCI, and then working at CircleCI. Like, we're selling to software engineers. It's really difficult to be a software engineer and not understand the problem of software engineering. You are by default dog fooding on day
Yes.
3, right? As soon as there's anything that works, you start building the software with the thing that you've built, right? It's like bootstrapping your own delivery process.
Yeah.
But it comes with a risk, which we didn't run into until probably past the 10 engineer point, because the first 8 to 10 people, you're probably aligning with people who think like you. That's a feature, right?
Yeah.
You're serving a niche of people who think just like you, and they love what you're doing because it's the way that they think, right? And when you're software engineers building for software engineers, like, you're going to find your niche, right? But
Yeah.
you start to get past that, and you get to, oh, we basically have been so opinionated about our approach that there's 90% of the software engineering world that doesn't want to do it the way that we think about it, and we've boxed them out, right? So you start to
Yeah.
have to transition and get a bigger picture, like a more, we talk to a bunch of different customers. We try to figure out what are the patterns and how could we solve something in a unique way that allows all of them to solve their problem, sort of thing. But at small size, you can be super opinionated, and you'll totally, it's better to kind of find that niche and be awesome in that niche and then break out of it, sort of like a crossing the chasm model,
Yeah.
than,
Yeah.
to go super broad and try to be everything to all people and not really win anyone's like hearts over, right? Like, you really need that sort of passion. But so to answer your question directly, 100%, every single person needs to understand what we're trying to do and why. And one of the things that I always say about that, 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, is that engineers are making thousands of decisions every day, right? Every line of code, like, sure, variable names, whatever, also decisions, but everything that they write, everything that an engineer sits down to write is a decision, right? This is going to
Yeah.
be more flexible. This is going to be less flexible. This is something that might change in the future. This is a place where it's not worth investing, right? And this is a place where we can honestly just build garbage because we have no idea that anybody wants it. We're going to throw it up and then see, we'll figure out how to scale it later or turn it into something good. Like, that investment decision is happening all day, every day. And you're not checking, even if you have a tiny team of 10 people or whatever, right? So the more informed people are about what really matters, which is very possible at that small scale, the faster you're going to move, right?
Yeah.
Because you're, kind of going back to the metrics thing. It's like, I don't need to sit down and spell everything out in a Jira ticket, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I might as well just be writing a spec for an LLM at that point. I have someone else who's making good decisions based on their understanding. And I do think this is, well, how would I say it? I've been back and forth on this particular point for a very long time, but I think at that small size, um, again, thinking this is like a startup versus a team of 8 within a
Yes.
company, I would always lean towards experience and seniority. I
Hmm.
think it's nice to have 1, 2 people in that team who ask a lot of questions that maybe other people who have
Yeah.
done something a bunch of times aren't going to ask, to keep them honest. Um,
Yeah.
but again, if you have to spell a lot out, um, it it's difficult. You don't get the pace. And
Yeah.
early, like, that size is all about pace, right? It's all
Yeah.
about, and it's about pace of learning more than it's about linear delivery, because you don't even know if you're building the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And so, I've grappled with that one a little bit, like, and the whole notion of junior engineers is certainly up in
Yeah.
question at the moment, because we're like, does that job go away? How do you become a senior?
Yes.
Like, but ignoring that for a second, um, I think when you're experimenting early, look at any system of a startup that didn't nail product market fit from the beginning, or honestly ones that did, and it's very organic. The growth of their software is very organic. Oh, let's try this thing now. Let's try this thing now. Let's try this thing now. And if you have the instincts to build really good software, even when you're moving at that pace, you'll build pretty good software, right? And it'll feel sort of coherent. It'll be a little bit
Yeah.
more flexible. And if it's just, oh, we want to try that, I slapped it over here. We want to try that, I slapped it over
Yeah.
here, kind of thing. Like, again, leaning back towards the junior, it's going to cost you down the road, right? When you get, okay, now we have product market fit and we're trying to scale, and we don't even know how this thing works anymore because there's so many cobbled together pieces. I think
Yeah.
that could be a challenge. So I wouldn't say, like, I would, die on that hill per se, but I think I would lean to
Yeah.
experienced people who can make, because I'm looking for people to make independent decisions again at that scale.
Yeah. I think there's like, I've no like definitive opinion on that. I think there's kind of a balance to be found because I mean, I was thinking about this while you were speaking, and in my experience, some share of people who are younger, fresher, I mean, less experienced, help in ways that are, I mean, like second order effects that are hard to predict. Like, they tend to hold even senior engineers to a higher standards. You have to explain things. But of course, you have to find, I think, a good balance that doesn't hold people back, right?
Yeah.
And it's a multiplier as opposed to something that, holds the team back,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, to be totally transparent, like my first job in software, which was basically the first time I touched software, like I dabbled in some things, but I don't have an education in software or anything, right? I went to a company with absolutely zero experience, super young, and was ridiculously curious and motivated to learn. And
Yeah.
if I reflect on that, I feel like I added a ton of value. Now, we were a very young company
Yeah.
overall. And I remember thinking like, what, we would bring in sort of some more experienced folks, and I was like, we don't need that. Like, look at how much energy and enthusiasm, whatever we have. But now that I'm looking at it from the other side of experience, and to be clear, like I'm 28 years into my software career. That's not what I mean. Like, I don't need people with 25, 30 years of experience, but enough experience to have just made some bad decisions and learn from them, right?
Yeah.
And now, of course, you can get that with a mix, right? You need at least some of that, right? Some guidance. I think of all the decisions we could have skipped, right? All of the pathways that we went down that we could have skipped, and that's the real accelerator in software delivery overall. Like, we spend, again, kind of looking at the metrics, and I would say like 8 to 10 people, I wouldn't spend a lot of time on metrics and dashboards. You would know. You could just sit in the room.
Yeah.
And I will say, if I was building a team of 8 to 10 people, we would sit in a room.
Yeah.
We can come back to that one in 1 second, but you can sit in the room and you could just feel the productivity or the lack
Absolutely.
thereof, right? You just
Absolutely.
look, and I want the transparency and trust. I would focus on building to be like, anybody stuck, and have someone throw up their hand and go, yeah, I literally have no idea how to do this. Does anyone else want to come and sit with me, right? And I think like that is huge, and it doesn't exist in every team, right? People are like, if I tell anyone that I don't know what I'm doing, I'm gonna get fired, right? And then what happens? You sit there for a week not doing anything and hope that somehow no one will notice. Like, it's not going to be a good outcome. So you need that, like, the motion is going to come from that sort of trust, coordination, alignment, all of those things. I mean, just at that size, I don't think you need dashboards to see it.
Absolutely.
You'll feel it.
So far we have said it's a small group of people. Let's skew towards seniority and experience with something in the mix, that maybe balances the experience.
Just ask some good questions, because everyone else thinks they know what they're doing.
Breeds enthusiasm. Yes. But what kind of like engineers would you hire? There is, there is a lot of debate today. I mean, whether maybe you pick some specialists here and there, or you want to go with like generalists, product engineering all the way through. I mean, do you think there is a paradigm that works better with everything that's happening today, AI and stuff? Or, I mean, what would you pick?
I think so. Don't leave out the like awareness of the product and the business goals. That's actually really the key thing and all that. But I would say I'm a big fan of kind of the T-shaped metaphor from IDEO. Like, probably it would be helpful to have some specific skills if we're going to need those skills, but I'm more interested in the rate at which people can learn new skills than I am in the skills that they've developed, right? Like,
that's
particularly right now. I mean, nobody is like, oh yeah, I've been using LLMs for 10 years to write my code. Like, let me just show you how, right? Literally everyone is like, I tried this morning and it seemed to help, right? And so that has to be, for me, that's always been true. There's very, very few times in my career where I've hired someone for the specific skills that they had, and they were either a consultant, right? I need this skill, but skills are transferable, so bring it in here and teach the rest of us, because we are more like generalist, T-shape, whatever. For people who don't know what T-shape is like deep in one or
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
things, but like a broad set of skills and interests. And and so I would say, yeah, like consultants, teach the rest of us. I'll pay you a decent amount, contract consulting rates, because I need this knowledge quickly. But your knowledge is not that, it's not long lasting, right? Because the world changes so quickly. And so when we say, oh, you know what would actually be really great? There's this new thing that someone has built, and we're 12 years into this. No, wait, I'm 11 years into this company. We're whatever, 14 years in as a company, right? And we're still adopting new technology. There's new, I mean, I forget AI, like don't forget it, but like that's huge, right? Understanding LLMs, all of that, and both in how we work and how we build our product. But we're adopting other pieces of technology throughout our stack. And I need people who, like, yes, you have a bunch of skills, and now I need you to get a new one like this week, right? I'm going to go sit down with the docs, watch a couple videos, build a demo with this thing, and decide if it's something that would be useful to us or not. And by next week, I'm going to be the resident expert in this company on this technology, and I'm going to get us there, right? I'm going to get us to the place where this is a thing that is really useful to us, right? So take a small team, you don't even know what you're building yet. Like, you could be all in on a particular stack. You're busy. You realize there's no business there, right? You pivot to something totally different. The company that got acquired by CircleCI was like Rails monolith
Yeah.
marketplace that turned into building a bunch of mobile apps for iOS, that turned into building the infrastructure to build mobile apps for iOS, right? And there was two engineers plus the person who's now the CEO of CircleCI was product guy. Who went through that whole transition, right? From Rails to iOS to like back into sort of web systems, whatever, which were not on Rails because it was 3-4 years later. And I mean, that's what I need, right? Hey, we need to learn how to do this now, right? Like
Yeah.
by next week, we need to be not just the experts here, but the experts on the planet in this particular topic, right? And so if you have that, then you're golden. Right now, that probably sounds pretty mythical, but I know lots of those people. And so you have to be now, does it have to be everyone? Maybe not. Again, to the point of like I can mix in a couple juniors, maybe at 8 or 10 people, but certainly
Yeah.
my first few hires, right? When I'm just trying to figure out what we're doing, absolutely, that's what I'm looking for. And then the other thing I would say on the T shape is like if everyone has the same depth, that's not good, right? Like we're trying to build a team. And I think people forget, right? We talk a lot about the profile of the engineer that we want to hire, but I'm building a team, right? I mean, I won't go deep into sports metaphors, but it's a great example. But pick anything that you do or that you appreciate that is a group or team effort. And is everyone a specialist in the same thing?
Yeah, of
That would be
course.
madness, right? Like, so what you really want is like, oh, this person happens to, maybe they're not like a DBA for a living because you're probably not hiring a DBA at 8
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
But is there
Yeah.
someone on the team that has some decent experience just dealing with large scale production databases? Because you might need their help at some point, right? So great.
Yeah.
But do we have that anywhere here? If not, maybe that's a thing that we want to include when we think about the next person that we're hiring. Like networking, web optimization. I was about to say something about building data centers, but luckily it's 2025. So I'm going back to my earliest experiences. But actually, that's a great example. Like we ended up building a data center in 1998. Zero experience in the entire team, but we couldn't hire someone that knew how to build data centers. We just bought some computers and went to a data center and plugged them in wrong 4 times and finally figured it out. And like, you just, again, curious, interested, motivated people that are, and
Yeah.
when you have, we'll go all the way back, when you have the understanding of what the business is trying to do and you're bought in, which is critical, right?
Yeah.
You have the motivation then to figure that out, right? And I think, particularly at that size, maybe that's just another trait, but it kind of rolls into that curiosity. When you do that with that level of sort of ambiguity about your business, about what you're working on, et cetera, the amount that you learn,
Yeah.
right? If you're an IC listening to this and you're like, would I ever want to work at a startup? You will learn things you never dreamed of.
Yeah.
And you might not use those exact things again, but you will understand systems in a way that you probably never will. I've never worked at Google, for example. But my understanding is so much of the system is abstracted away from you, and so many of the
Yes.
choices are very, very specific and done the Google way, which allows them to operate a remarkable business at a remarkable scale. None of this is a negative, but you learn how to be a Google engineer at
Yeah,
Google,
it's very
right?
specific. Yeah.
Versus like I've seen a little bit of everything, and again, I keep joking about physics, but like I think in first principles, right? Do I have the background information to rebuild my knowledge in a new world? And so when everything becomes about AI, for example, right? I think many people are going to get into programming now, right? We hear about citizen
Yeah.
coders and whatever. Those
Yes.
systems are going to be delightful until they're not. And when they go totally sideways, the people who actually know how computers work underneath the 17 layers of abstraction that we built are going to be extremely valuable, right? So
Yeah.
if you have that kind of background and understanding of the breadth of how these systems interact, et cetera, and can rip apart the abstraction when it's no longer working, I think that's a really good set of traits to have. Now that we're kind of out of like my dream team, but if you were
Yeah.
on that
Yeah. Yeah.
dream
Yeah.
team,
Yeah.
trust me, you will build skills that will last you a lifetime regardless of how this world changes.
Yeah, I love how you trace this portrait. So we got experienced people who are willing to learn and willing to do what it takes, to because they're informed about, they know about the business, they're on board with what the outcome should be, what we need to do, and they're willing to learn what it takes. The thing is, isn't it hard to find those folks? I mean, I can think of so many, like, I wouldn't say like failure modes, but for example, my experience, like senior people who have seen a lot of things tend to like more likely to be kind of less open to learn new things. It's like you get maybe into some specialty, something that you're very experienced on, and you kind of think like you have a hammer and everything looks like a nail, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
That's also one maybe of the advantages of junior engineers. They can grow and fit the mold, whatever you need to do and you need from them. But yeah, it feels hard these days to find folks that are both like that open and also experienced about different things.
Yeah. Everybody, like, it's hard to find anything. Is it? Yes, but is it worth it? Right. That's the question
Yeah,
that you would ask
absolutely.
yourself. And so, um, I think, I mean, if we're really talking about like starting a business, right? I think starting a business is really hard,
Yeah.
regardless. But every person that you add is a really big bet, right? So let's say you start a company with two people. You got two founders, pretty normal,
Yeah.
right? You hire your first engineer, right? Are you going to say, "Oh, it's really hard to find the person we want, so we'll just take this person"?
No,
Like that is
never.
1/3 of your company now, right?
Absolutely.
And probably if you have like a more business sales product founder and a CTO, right? So you got one engineer. So the first engineer that you hire is 50% or more of your engineering capacity because the
Yeah.
CTO is also going to VC meetings and whatever else they're doing, right? I mean, early stage CTO is really just a team lead that, every once in a
Yes.
while makes a slide. But
You
like
need to you need to get it right.
it's so
Absolutely.
so important. And you know uh, Jim, our CEO, and I have been working together since the previous company that we built together, right? So we started that company in 2011, like January 2011,
Wow.
and we're in October of 2025, right? Like
Yeah.
that is the kind of relationship that you're signing up for. And if it's
Yes.
not going to last 14 years, it's probably going to last 14 minutes.
Yeah.
And like, if you bring that person in, now we're not talking so much about their traits as an engineer, but you bring that person in, and the first thing you do is have an argument about your tech stack because they don't like what you're doing or whatever. Like, you've made a massive,
It's
massive
a bad
mistake,
sign.
right? Like, in fact, if I go all the way back to 2011, the first engineer that we hired, we weren't using Rails at the time. We had a bunch of little prototype stuff that I had written in Python, and I knew this person, and he was like, "Look, I don't really know a lot of Python. I'll be honest, I don't love it. And I'm ridiculously prolific and fast in Rails. Like, how wed are you to Python? Because that could be a problem." I'm like, I don't care. I'll learn Ruby tomorrow afternoon. Like, it's
Yeah.
fine, right?
That's the answer
And
you
so,
want.
so for me, like it was, I made that first adjustment, because we had found someone who met all of those other criteria that I just described and was super motivated to work for us. And we knew as a business we would be more successful because nothing we had built so far was really that valuable or interesting. Anyway, we were testing ideas and whatever. And I was like, you go. He had rebuilt everything that I had done or the parts of it that mattered in the first week. And I was like, cool. I mean, I can order a book on Ruby.
Yeah.
Like I can learn a programming language. It's not a big deal. And I was very much that like team lead making a slide every once in a while. I mean, I was developing full time basically. But then after that, we weren't having that conversation again with the next engineer. Right? I was like, this is how we build. If you want to work in this environment, great. And then what are all these other skills that you bring to the table? And we built a fantastic team. So fun. We worked so fast. Like everything was so productive. And I can think of the junior team member who agitated everyone else and was like, we're not moving fast enough. Why are we spending so much time on this? And he was just like a fantastic member of the team. So maybe I'll eat those words again. I'll just say team, right? Like that's the thing. You're building a team and you need, like, it's not going to be all junior. It's not going to be maybe all senior. It's not going to be all experts in this or that, because what you need is the team to be able to deliver consistently and reliably and have all the traits across, and also just not fight with each other over everything, right? Like it doesn't have to be all like-minded, but they have to be willing to drive to the outcome at some point. Say, you know what, I don't care about that decision. That's fine. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we worked through this thought experiment under the assumption that this was like startup, new company, but is it really that different for like a product team inside a large organization? I mean, if I think of the traits that we explored, I mean, should we think differently if we are in a large organization, or is it just that the stakes are higher in a startup? You have to nail this absolutely.
I mean, are they even like?
Are they even right? Yes.
Well, I mean, your company might not succeed. So if you think those stakes are higher, then yes. And to say they're not is probably weird. Like, yeah, you've got other people's money and whatever, and you probably want to create a great outcome. But like, if you look at the slate of startups, I'll come back to your question in 1 second, don't worry. But if you look at the slate of startups, right, the portfolio, I mean, every VC builds a portfolio based on power law, right? Like, 8 of them are going to fail. One of them, the worst one, is going to be the one that just muddles along for years. And I keep having to go to the board meetings, but they never actually have an outcome, right? And then there's one that makes the fund.
Yeah.
That's all I'm counting on, 1 in 10, making the fund kind of thing. And those numbers probably aren't exactly right, but that's the super high level.
No, I think they are pretty accurate. Yeah.
Well, they're from the same blog post that we've all read by VCs who write about this stuff. But I mean, I've spent enough time with VCs. Like, so by definition, there's an 80% expectation that you will fail, right? So how high are those stakes? Like, it feels miserable to not succeed, but like, I think, like, I throw around the word failure flippantly. And it gets me in trouble a lot. I'll say I confuse people, I make people sad, but I do it because I want failure, right? And so now I'm trying to reshape that around hypothesis. We have a hypothesis and we're going to test it and we're going to have new information, right? So there's options A and B. We might personally think, you might be tied to A and think it's right. But when we say we're just testing between A and B, right? When it turns out B is right, then awesome, we have new information and we can move, right? And I think that also means I'm willing to do things with much less thinking, right?
Yes.
Much less debate. So like, how are we going to get the information to answer this question? Like, we can talk about it all day. We can draw more and more pictures, or we could put it in front of customers and see if it works, right? And particularly I can generate that thing in 20 minutes and put it in front of a customer, right? Maybe we'll just check that the passwords are locked down. But like, that is becoming more and more possible right now. So I think, to get back to the question of how you scale that, right? Do I want people to think differently in a large organization? No. I do think you start to find a transition that should not be a whole organization transition, right? I do things like build out a platform team, right? In order to make everyone else more successful, we are going to build all the shared components that people can rely on. We're going to have a consistent system for doing this. We're going to have some standards, right? Like you don't spend a lot of time, although maybe it would be great if we did at 8 people, just be like, these are our coding standards. This is how we do everything. And no one will ever question it.
Yeah.
Then new people come in and sort of just follow along instead of saying, oh, in my company, we did it this way. And so I'm going to change that in my team. Like that becomes quite painful over time. But that is a place where like below that line, I want the platform team to think like a product team. I have a customer that is an engineer building product, and I am going to move quickly and I'm going to iterate. But I do need this thing to scale and support a large number of people. So I might move a little bit differently in that environment. And then when I think about, let's use CircleCI as an example, like our core build engine has been pretty consistent for a pretty long time, right? What matters is how we scale it to the next order of magnitude, right? And how we make sure it's robust under various different conditions. And then a little more flexibility as more different perspectives come in from our customer base, right? But it's much more incremental. And that skill set is a little bit different, can be different. And you might succeed in a team like that without maybe the like rapid experimentation and pivot and I can learn all these new skills all the time. You might succeed there, right? And that's okay because you might bring to that, you asked about specialists earlier, some specialized skills that took you 10 years to hone that we can't just learn in an afternoon, right? Like I'm very, again, sort of flippant about like I could just grab a book and I'll know that by tomorrow, but there are things that I can't learn in a day. It's probably a relatively long list of them actually. And so like that becomes more valuable, I think, at scale. And so what matters though for me is that you know where you fit, right? And so like this is an area where we're still trying to move quickly and iterate and learn and like regardless of how old your product is, something's changing, right? And this is an area where we're trying to scale and be robust and we want to be cautious and like making rapid changes here would frustrate our customers more than delight our customers, right? And so again, there might be some specialties there. Now, overall, if you sort of like zoom in on that team, I still think you want to experiment quickly. You want to be learning quickly. It just might be a different form of experiment, right? Like we built a little side project and we tested some ideas for how we could make this more robust and more scalable and whatever, because anything that's like, oh, we know exactly what to do and we're going to spend a year doing it is probably very far off the mark by the time you get to the end of that year, right? So I do think that things change a little bit, but I really do want multiples of that 8 to 10 person team, sort of to your point, working effectively. Now you run into the challenges of cross-team interaction and all those things, and you can go read team topologies and try to figure out how to manage that effectively. It's hard. It's like it always looks great with boxes and arrows on a drawing, but remember, like it's imperfect. You're going to be, as a leader, constantly watching, navigating, saying, "Oh yeah, this system doesn't seem to align very well. Therefore, there's like a hot spot here. It takes a huge amount of coordination to get something done here. How do we fix that?" And the answers could be quite different. Like there's a lot of options for what the answer would be, but that becomes part of the job as a leader, rather than just I'm leading this team of 8 people and we know what we're building. It's going to be great, right? Like how do we get these teams to operate effectively without being completely siloed and like everybody's rebuilding the same thing? Like there's a lot. It's engineering. There are trade-offs in org design. There are trade-offs in system design, right? So I think that's the thing that creeps in that isn't just the like cookie cutter, that 8-person team and the magic happens, right? Everybody's got a different web framework. Like pick your worst nightmare and like try to stack that in. So you have to put in the energy to try to keep them operating as much like that original team as possible, but there's always going to be a little bit of overhead.
Yeah, I love how you described, the things that stay the same versus the things that where you have an opportunity to do things differently. Like you have more leverage to build platform, but you still want to have these core product teams that work under similar or the same principles of a startup. But if you had to mention like what are the potential mistakes and ways you might not get there, right? Maybe you think at your own mistakes and that you don't get to this
another 45 minutes at least for that, and that would just be at bullet points.
Yeah, what are the most common ones? Why not all companies like get to operate under these assumptions?
Yeah, so One thing that I say a lot, I'm 11 plus years into CircleCI, is that's a long enough time to live with the consequences of your decisions, right? Like I think a
Yes.
lot of people move around a lot, and I don't begrudge them. Like
Mm.
there's plenty of operating environments that I wouldn't want to be in or whatever, but you can learn a lot. I have like I wouldn't exactly say it this way often, but I have some regrets. Everybody has regrets. We were talking about them the other day, Jim and I, our CEO, and he used this expression. There, we made some great decisions and some decisions that we would revisit, right? And I think it's a very generous way of looking at it. Like I said, I throw around failure flippantly, like that. We had a hypothesis, we were wrong, and some. That I think the key point in there is the arc of your decisions and the feedback loops are really long
Yeah.
on a sort of company leadership level, right? If you're a software developer with a bunch of unit tests, like within seconds whether the thing you just wrote, hopefully milliseconds, honestly, that's my wish for every developer, right? Whether the thing you just did is right or wrong.
Yes.
But like we're going to organize a team in this way, we're going to choose this piece of technology, we're going to whatever. I sort of publicly stated in a Stackshare post in
Mm.
2015, 2016, somewhere in there, that we were moving off of Mongo. We're
Yeah.
still on Mongo. Like we use a lot of Postgres, but we still have Mongo, right? Now Mongo was there when I got to the company. I wouldn't say that's like a particularly interesting decision, but people make technology decisions early that are often, this is going to accelerate us, but it's going to accelerate us in the short term. Um,
Yeah.
and when we try to operate that thing at scale, we have no experience. And no one has any, like it's new enough as a technology that no one has any experience. CircleCI was also built. Now, these aren't my decisions. I'll get to mine in a second. But CircleCI was written in Clojure, which
Mm.
is a language and ecosystem
Didn't know that.
that is very hard to find help in even these days, right? Like so this notion that we will pick an ecosystem that's going to give us this leverage. It's so much faster to write. It's so much whatever that we are going to outpace the competition because we pick this unique and interesting piece of technology generally tends
Mm.
to be a flawed decision, I would say, right? So
Yeah.
we have a lot
That's
of
my experience as well. I've done many of these mistakes.
yeah, it always sounds amazing at the time, right? Look at how much faster we are, but it's great. Again, that's actually one of the risks of that early team that's capable of learning anything and super curious, right? Is kind of that's how you keep them engaged sometimes. It's like the
Yeah.
bone that you throw to that team. It's like, oh, let's use this cool technology. And it was actually a really great lever to hire people in the early days of CircleCI because they were out there. People that
Yeah.
loved the idea of Clojure, wanted to work in a functional programming language, and
Yeah.
they would come work. That early question, how do you find those people? They would come to us. Being a 10
Yes.
person, 20 person company with inbound like recruiting calls, like please hire me, I want to work there so badly,
Yeah.
is amazing. But
And
then
these are
try to
usually
build it.
brilliant people. These are also usually brilliant people. But
Mhm.
would you say this paid back the decision? I mean, this was enough to say this was a win?
No. I mean,
No.
like we'll be on it as long as we're on Mongo in parts of our stack.
Yeah.
And like I personally love the programming language, but as a leader, I'm concerned with building an
Mm.
organization of 100, 200 engineers. That's a different problem, right? And
Yeah.
we've taught some people for sure, but it ends up being a hindrance over time, right? And particularly like the community around the language has started to
Yes.
slow down, right? And so
Yeah.
like everything that we need to integrate with, we have to build our own. Like we write more code as a result.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't witnessed the like how good AI is with Clojure, but if you think about the training corpus, right? That's also going to be much
Yes.
smaller, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And so, although maybe all written by really talented engineers, so maybe it's actually really good. I haven't actually experimented. I'll ask around
Yeah.
inside the company. But anyway, those are a couple that were early that I got to enjoy, but didn't necessarily make. And then I think one of the things that haunts me. That's a deep word, but we're coming up on. I don't know if this will go out before or after Halloween, but
Let's throw it
we're in the
out.
neighborhood of Halloween.
Yes.
Um, is the lack of standardization early.
Mm.
To the kind of as we were talking about cookie cuttering, like more of the same sort of style of team, right? A team saying, "Oh yeah, we also are very curious and can learn quickly, and we believe this would be great for us." Right.
Yeah.
And I think now that was also sort of early days of services and stuff like that. There's just a lot more tread off those tires at this point. Like people understand what it looks like to be successful as a large organization building independent services. And so we've spent a lot of time kind of retrofitting. Here's some standard
Mm.
tooling, make your stuff look like this, but there's always some outliers. Oh, no one's even working on that thing anymore. So when then something, we have to go fix something with it and nobody knows how it works because it's different and that person left. Like that sort of what I think of as like local optimization, right? So
Yeah.
maybe we've hit a local maximum in speed as a team because we made some decisions that are good for us, but the global is actually much lower, right? Like we missed the opportunity for the global delivery throughput velocity, however you want to think about it, because now when I need something from another team, I literally don't understand their code enough to go say, hey, we'll just do this, right? Let me just put this thing in there. Now we've undone a lot of that, but it
Yeah.
took an enormous amount of effort to undo
Yeah.
that. And so I often think in things that are decisions that are really cheap really early and really
Yeah.
expensive later. And there are other things that are expensive early and cheap later, right? Scaling problems are actually cheaper when you have customers and money than when you're a brand new business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But setting your like values or principles of how you work is really easy when you're the two founders or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
This is who we
but
are.
I think this is so hard to get right, though. I mean,
Mm,
the setting the right border between, what things need to be the same for everybody, what things
mm.
instead you want to live free, and people are just faster, independent. So, I mean, if you could go back, what are some things that you would definitely, set the same for everybody, and others that instead people should just go and choose for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about changing programming languages, but programming languages feels like a really obvious one. You know, everybody has their
Yeah,
story of like some service written in a language that no one in the company knows because somebody
yeah,
built it and left. And it's like, I heard someone tell this story the other day, and it was like their authentication service or something like super critical, important thing that no one understood. And it wasn't us. I'll just say that. So that feels like an easy one. And I would say on top of that, again, we have some libraries that we use to build
mm,
services so that we can encapsulate really common problems,
mm,
um, like how we connect to databases, how we connect to queues, etc. And they don't sound particularly interesting, right? Because I think the reason you get to this state is you think, well, I'm just taking the driver that everyone else would
mm,
take, and I'm talking to it. But what you learn in not very long once you're scaling is you have all kinds of resilience concerns, observability concerns. Like you're adding all of these patterns, and we've managed to extract those patterns into tooling
mm,
that you don't have to think about.
mm.
And actually, your observability strategy, right? I'll probably throw
Yeah,
out CI/CD. Like, why not? I
yeah,
would use patterns rather than having everyone write their own, because at some point, you're scaling, and now you go to get your SOC 2 certification, and
yeah,
somebody asked the question, how do I know that this can't go to production without a second approver? And one team is like, well, we do it this way, and another team's like, we do it this way. And now your documentation is nuts, and
totally.
your evidence that you have to provide in an audit is completely ridiculous. Instead of
Yeah,
saying one screenshot, the entire org is configured this way, just do that, right? So I think like the process flows and stuff. You don't have to have a platform team when you're 8 people. You probably shouldn't, but set that up. And again, like if you're keeping it as simple as possible, you probably have a monolith anyway. But then
yeah.
use that pattern, right? Whatever you figured out, then use that pattern if you do end up in a place where you break things out into services. So what wouldn't I consolidate? What don't I really care about in patterns? Certainly developer environments. I'm not going
Mm,
to mandate an IDE to everyone in the
yeah,
organization, right? Like that, unless that was on the job description from the first day and the first hire, like if you work here, you will use JetBrains or whatever. I don't use JetBrains. Um, uh, like why, right? If you can generate code and you can like, because developers are they're different, they're human, they have their
yeah,
like. I look at other people's color schemes on their terminals, and I'm like, you chose that, right? Like, but who cares? That's their environment, not my environment. Like as
yeah,
long as we can effectively pair, right? If pairing is part of our thing, that's important, right? But I don't think that's hard. I think people are really good at learning each other's systems or whatever. That's one. I think we've kind of gone back and forth on um like how would I describe it? Like agile models, you know what I mean? Like, is it really important that everyone is on the same sprint with the same timing of the,
Yeah.
and we find that helpful at the moment. But I think it comes at a cost. So that's one I would evaluate in your organization, right? You're sort of like pushing people into a structure. I think we try to do the things that don't feel like they're really going to matter. Like the timing is reasonable so we can have good conversations, scrum of scrum or whatever. We don't call it that, but like as a product group, we can get together and say, cool, like, how are we doing? Do we need to mix anything up over the next cycle? But lots of orgs don't even use Scrum. But
do you think you need to keep it open, like with IDEs, because of preferences of people, or do you generally think like different teams may need to work at a different pace, different cycle length, and stuff?
the cycles are the IDEs.
The cycles.
The cycles, yeah. So I think I would say this. Once you start standardizing that, your risk is maybe not the cycle. I think the cycles are fine. Yeah. It's that the ceremonies that you try to describe, right? Hey, and you should probably have like a retro and a sprint planning and whatever. This is how we're going to do it, right? It's nice because people can move between teams. They don't have to spend a lot of time learning this stuff. You can get a higher level view. But I would say if you're optimizing for reporting to executives, you might be optimizing for the wrong thing. And so it's got some niceties, but again, the rituals or the practices that come with it can become performatory. I think that's the right word, right? Like, oh, we have to have one of these meetings because everyone else has one of these meetings, but we're not actually really great at it, right? And I think really good agile with a lowercase a or lean or however we want to talk about it comes from the team, right? Like the team, and it comes from really honest retros, which are really hard to come by, unfortunately, where the team sits down and says, we could be better if we changed our behavior in this way, right? There's always going to be some outside forces, and I'm probably half the outside forces, so I totally understand that. But like, when you're willing to sit down and say, we could have done better, which comes from wanting to do better, right? Like if the team has that true spirit of like, we will feel better about ourselves if we're continually getting better, right? And then sit down and say, we could do better. I think getting there requires, I don't know that it's the cycle or the ceremonies, whatever, but it requires some flexibility to think about those practices for yourself and for what works in the team. And then, right, kind of joking about optimizing for executive visibility or whatever, the question is, what do people outside of our team need from us, right? And I think if you're really good at providing that, you'll create the room for yourself to make your own decisions, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, I was going to try to use the IDE as an example, but it's so ridiculous. Like, what would I possibly need from it? Maybe I'm trying to optimize for the cost of the organization. I can get this one IDE, I pay for it, I get a better discount, right? If I buy the same thing for everybody in the company, there's not that many paid IDEs out there, but let's pretend. And so I make that decision, and now my engineers work at 30% of the pace that they were working at before, right?
Yes.
Like, that is the most ridiculous cost optimization decision that you could make. And luckily, like, I have a spreadsheet and I can do math. But I think on the teams, right? Like, what would I be optimizing for? What would people outside need? They need to know what we need to be successful. They need to know whether we're being successful, not because we're bad people, but because something is getting in our way. They need to know that we care passionately about that and we're working on it. And sometimes they need to know when something's going to be delivered because a customer is asking, right? And we don't necessarily need to say 3 p.m. next Friday, but we can say, oh yeah, we're about a week out and we'll give you new information as soon as we have it, sort of thing. And if we're really good at communicating out, then we buy ourselves a lot of freedom, right? And this is true. Like, I'm telling a story about like sprint rituals. This is true for every position in every company that's ever existed. If you are good at providing the things that your stakeholders or interested parties need before they know they need them, you'll have all kinds of freedom to make your own choices. If you aren't, people will come make choices for you, right? I need you to write this report on this date because I feel lost. I feel like I'm flying blind, and therefore, and because I'm choosing the data that I'm going to digest, I'm going to make you format the data in this way, right? I have, for example, I mean, we do this up and down in our company on a weekly basis. My directors write for me, like, this is what happened this week. This is what I'm worried about. This is what's going well, etc. I take what I think is important to share out with our entire leadership team, right? Here are the things you should care about if you're not sitting in engineering. Some of this stuff is interesting to me, but not interesting to you. Like, I know what you need. And every one of our leaders does that, and everyone does it in a completely different format that works for them. And that's fine because we're all doing it, right? If someone didn't do it and they were like, no, I'm not interested, they would get a very mandated, this is the format, this is the time of day that I need to receive it, et cetera, right? And so I think that's true everywhere, and it's true down to the team, at least for me. You know, some other leader might say, no, I need exactly the same format because I need to train people on how to do sprints, and I need the training wheels, and therefore I'm going to lock everyone into a very, very consistent pattern. But I think if people outside feel like they're getting what they need, there's a lot less kind of, standardization. And I think that freedom can be healthy for teams. But yeah, I mean, going all the way back to your first point, it's hard. Knowing what to make standard and what not is hard. We always get it wrong. We introduce overhead that slows us down. We create freedom that slows us down. Like, and so continuous learning, right? The retros aren't just in the teams. The retros have to be like up the ladder to say, something's not working here. I don't feel like I'm getting what I need. I feel like we're making it hard for these people. Let's talk about it and see what we can, and change. Like, don't be wed to any of those things, right?
But I love your story about standardization. I mean, how a lot of that comes from, it's defensive behavior against, bad things that happened in the past. And so I think a useful lens is like asking yourself, if you're seeing something that gets imposed to be a standard that you don't totally agree, you may ask yourself, what's the concern behind that? Like in the story of the reports. I mean, if everybody's doing that, even if it's different for everybody, but the outcome is good, there's no reason to change how it is. If somebody's trying to impose something, maybe there is some challenge, some concern, some need, and let's explore why it is the case.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important questions to ask is the most uncomfortable. Like, how did I contribute to that? Right? Like if there's a need outside of my organization or my team or whatever that's not being met, like, what am I not hearing? What am I not seeing that's contributing to that? Because we're humans, right? Obviously, it's not my fault. Like, I can't believe that person is so needy, is such a control freak, whatever. But the other thing that we say quite often in our organization, everybody has a boss, right? Everybody reports to somebody, right? We have a board of directors. Just because we're the C-suite or whatever doesn't mean we get to just do whatever we want, right? We have way less direction.
Especially.
Yeah, exactly. Like, with way more ambiguity and way less direction, we're playing a bit of I mean, obviously we're trying to do the right thing for the business, and that's what we were hired to do, or that's what we get paid to do. But there's always someone with another perspective. There's always, there's market perspective, there's investor perspectives, all this. And someone is trying to solve for that, and generally, hopefully, under most circumstances, do the right thing for the business. And they're asking you to help them do the right thing for the business, right? And so I think it's, I'm a big fan of really uncomfortable questions for myself. And that's just one that I try to ask all the time. Like, okay, this doesn't, like, someone's unhappy, and I probably contributed to that somehow. What did I do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also a perfect closing note. So thank you so much, Rob, for this chat. We covered a lot of ground. I loved it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Luca, for having me. This was super fun.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this chat valuable, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find the show. You can find all past episodes and learn more about the show at refactoring.fm. See you in the next episode.